Hello friends! To celebrate the upcoming re-release of Princess Mononoke in the US for its 20th anniversary, I am bringing you a Studio Ghibli themed DIY today. Just a little warning, this is probably the most creepy, weird and downright bizarre thing I have ever made, but I'm going to show you it anyway. So today I'm going to make a Kodama, and that is the Japanese little tree spirits that you see in Princess Mononoke. And one of the things about them is that they have these little clicking heads, and I thought maybe I could try and recreate that somehow in a DIY. So that is the plan for today. First of all, you're going to need some white material, and you can use any white material you want, but I like using second-hand items, so I'm using this bandana that I don't wear anymore. I picked it because it's not just plain white, it's got these little silver embellishments all over it, and since the Kodama in the movie glow, I thought that would be quite a nice touch. The second thing you'll need is a clicking medicine bottle or pot with a neck that is as narrow as possible, and it also needs to be made of plastic and not glass. Obviously, if you're not an adult, then make sure there's nothing dangerous in the bottle or tub and that you have permission to use it. So I began by cutting the material from the elastic part of the bandana and then spreading it out and just giving it an iron to make it nice and smooth. Once I'd ironed it, I noticed that it was a little bit grubby where the creases had been, so I threw it in the wash, let it dry, and then ironed it out again. And finally, I had this nice clean flat piece of material to begin working with. Next, I'm just taking the clicking bottle that I'm using. It is an old cough mixture bottle that I've washed out, and as you can see, the neck is nice and narrow. I'm now going to cut most of the body of the bottle away, and this stage is pretty dangerous, so please be really careful or ask someone to help you. I used a sharp knife to make a hole in the bottle, and then I proceeded to cut all the way around the plastic bottle, so I was just left with the cap and the neck part. The next thing I did was to brush some white paint over the dark part of the bottle, and obviously you won't have to do this if your bottle is already a light colour, but mine's really dark and I don't want it to show through the white fabric, so I'm just putting a quick layer of paint on it. Once that's done, I set that aside to dry, and while it's drying I'm returning to my fabric. So you need to split the material into 4 pieces. We're going to need 2 pieces for the front and back of the body and 2 for the front and back of the head. And the head pieces don't need to be quite as big as the body pieces, so I'm not quite splitting it down the middle. I folded it in half once and then again, but I adjusted this fold slightly so that 2 pieces are slightly bigger than the other 2. And then I cut both folds to split the fabric up. If you have a massive piece of fabric, you don't have to worry so much about this. Mine was just pretty small, so I needed to make sure that I distributed it equally and had enough to use. The next step is to sketch the shape of the Kodama onto the underside of the fabric, so the wrong side, and I'm just using a graphite pencil to do that, but any pencil or chalk will do. These little tree spirits are all different shapes and sizes in the movie, so I found a picture of some on my phone and I just picked one to copy. As you're sketching it out, just pay attention to the proportions, because the head is almost as long as the body in most of the cases, and it looks quite out of proportion, but that's just how it is. The most important thing at this stage is to make the neck of the head and the body pretty wide, a few centimeters wider than the width of your bottleneck, so measure that if you want, and also make it a few centimeters longer than necessary as well. When you're done with the sketches, put the right sides of the fabric together and pin everything in place for both the head and the body. Next, I'm going to go away and backstitch using white thread and just following the line that I've drawn. Once I'd finished the sewing, I took the head and I cut around my stitching, leaving a few millimeters from the stitches to make sure nothing comes undone, and then I turned the part back the right way round. Just double check that the bottle cap fits in the neck of the plush, which mine did, thank goodness, and then you can go ahead and stuff the head with some stuffing. I then went ahead and repeated the process with the body. Next, I trimmed down the piece of bottle that I've got left so that it's even smaller, and now you want to tuck the bottle into the stuffed body and slide it down so that the wider bit just sits on the shoulders of the plush. Next, you want to tuck the neck material into the bottle and then squash the cap on top so that you're trapping all the material inside. When you're done, it should look something like this, and you should find that you can still click the top of the bottle pretty easily without disturbing any of the fabric. Before we fit the head on, we need to add some eyes and a mouth, and I'm using black buttons for this. I picked ones that were shiny. The holes aren't too big, so it's kind of more of a solid shape for those big dead eyes and mouth. And I also picked one with a pretty pattern on it, just to add a little bit more interest. So I positioned them on the head and then I pinned them in place, ready to sew on. For the sewing, I doubled up some black thread and I stitched on each one of the buttons in turn. Next, you'll need to fold in the material in the neck of the head neatly and just slot it onto the bottle cap. And what you're going to do to finish this off is to put a few stitches around the cap to tighten the neck so that the head doesn't come off when you turn it. So I'm just stitching the head closed around the bottle cap. I'm not attaching the head to the body. I'm just tightening the seam of the head so that it's right up snug next to the bottle cap. And I'm even putting a few stitches just under the rim of the cap so that the material can't pull loose over that part. Then I'm doing the same on the other side of the cap. And once I was finished, I gave it a good tug to check that everything was really secure and that the head wasn't just going to fall off every time you click the bottle. And then finally, it is done. So as you can see, it clicks pretty nicely. It looks pretty quirky. I quite like it, but as I said, it's probably the weirdest thing I've ever made. It doesn't really go in the aesthetic of my home, but I'm sure it will really appeal to some of you. I just really like trying new things, and this was pretty fun and it was something a bit different. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.